Magnetic peace.
Can I say hi?
You can say peace.
Hi.
You gotta say peace.
I want to say hi.
You want to say hi? You don't want to say peace?
Mommy, introduce her.
No. Only people that say peace I introduce.
Peace.
All
How
right.
can you say it?
All right, then. Who's that? I know who it is. I thought you were gonna say it.
Well, you have to say it.
All right, this is Kitty K.
My doll.
All right.
Happy, is Maria invited?
She got work to do. So
After she does it?
I don't know. I don't know what you kids want to do. All right. I have some time here to build. Everything seems to be working. Thanks, Malik. That's my youngest Alma. Right, Alma Soul. Appreciate that, Malik. You know, it was a nice born day. I had to spend it with my daughters. It was nice. So whatever, I want to spend some time talking about a plus lesson I referred to last week. I think it's before I teach about planning, I want to teach this plus lesson about what we are planning to study. You know, because one of the reasons that we don't really develop is that I think that we have goals. I think that we achieve the goals. But sometimes the goals that we have to achieve don't really develop us very well. So how do we achieve our goals in such a way where we develop further? You know what I mean? Where we develop further and actually can build, right? And yeah, definitely want to eat them, but I can't. You know what I mean? But so I'm looking for it now. The justice curriculum is what I was talking about the last class, and then I'll be going through it and stuff. You know what I mean? And you'll see that a lot of it is relevant. This is something that I wrote in the early 2010s. No, not even. Maybe even earlier than that. But certainly at least almost 10 years, at least 10 years old. At least, you know, and it's something that I expounded on a little bit last week. So I'll go through it. And this will be like a precursor to the interactive planning plus lesson that I have. And of course, that'll be perfect for the last day of the year so that we get some kind of perspective on the 30th, understanding Cipher Day, you know, how we can add on fruitfully. All right, Stocky, Allah love, peace. New people, I don't know Allah love. Shakim, right? Stocky B, Shakim, RPV's peace. And you know, I saw that, you know, once it had happened, Darkim had talked about the entire debate about the flat earth. Can't say it without laughing. There's a part of me that finds it funny. There's a part of me that is very embarrassed. There's a part of me that's saddened because, and then I'll talk about it. I think in some ways that'll be useful in the way that we deal with debate. You know what I'm saying? Because I think one of the things of debate is that you feel like you have to be right. And if you go into a debate, you ought to be right about the information that you seek. You know what I mean? I'm gonna analyze some of the reasons. I only saw like an hour, Reese. I would like to intend, but a lot of stuff I'm behind on. Like just I spend so much time listening to music, so like when I'm writing about the music, just 2021 alone, I'm studying over 380 albums that I have. So when there's a podcast and stuff, unless it's useful, I'm not really studying it. And this is a podcast that doesn't really help me if I watch it at 2 times speed, because I need to see the interaction. You know, you need to see the interaction and things like that. You know what I mean? Especially since Lord Jamal's arguments are mainly um, emotional. See? And see, Reese, I think one of the arguments though is that, you see, I'm gonna disagree with you there. I'm gonna disagree with you there, right? Only to agree with you in a longer roundabout way, right? For the sake of this build. Lord Jamal, Lord Jamal is not really being a 5%er. See, that's more important. He may not bear witness to a mystery God. He may see the original man as God, all of that. As far as, like, let's say different original people, because you have a lot of movements and, you know, they're involved in stuff where they don't see different original peoples. Let's say maybe like myself as original. I've met Lord Jamal multiple times and he's never done that. They have, you know, so it's not about that either. One of the things that has to be said is not that he's not a 5%er because he disagreed with something that's said in the lesson. Like actual fact says Earth is 93 million miles away. And then he says, no, it's not. That's not what makes him not a 5%er. Okay. And I'm going to break that down a little bit. You know what I mean? In a little bit. You know what I mean? It's because it's not that he's no longer a 5%er, because 5%er is not a thing. It's a reality that you live. What we are is the true and living God, or the true and living earth, or a righteous man with knowledge, or a righteous woman with knowledge. That's what you are. What you are being is something is different, because you have to constantly take in the role. What is the role that you've undertaken? And you know, he corrupted that role of being a 5%er, being one of those that know, one of the few that know and willing to teach to uplift. And here's why I say that it has nothing to do with the argument itself. So we have to rewind back a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to do that in a little bit. I just want to present some things as I go on. Okay. And any questions that people have, though. You know what I mean? Reese, that's an excellent point. He's saying that there's a dome over the earth, and which means he's indirectly saying there's a mystery God. I mean, you're exactly right. You know, the simple logic that for you to come to that point makes a lot of sense. And I think what's even more corruptible in his mind is that in his own mind, he probably bears witness. Like if you said that to him, it's probable that he may say that the dome is organically made, like that this flat earth is organically made that way, like it organically developed that way. And I take pause for exaggerated emphasis of how the, you know what I mean? How the fuck can that happen? You know what I mean? It makes no sense. But I'm going to go through his argument though, so that way you know that we cannot understand how someone could go for this type of argument if we don't see it that way. But there's so many sub arguments and emotional pleas that are given here. So one of the things I say when you walk into my classroom is that I don't want emotional pleas, but scientific reasoning. So I don't want science only. The quoting of doctrine, the quoting of consistent doctrine, things like that, but a consistency of reasoning. And that's what I want to expose here, is the lack of consistent reasoning. And also for you all to get some kind of build about when you start building with 120, what are you going to do with it? You know, how are you going to build with it? Are you just going to believe it as you go along with it? These are things that are very important. You know what I mean? These are things that are very important, because some of the the framework. People always talk about statistics and things like that. That's what you give. That's not really what's the problem here. The problem is the reasoning and the inconsistency of reasoning, where it may have been okay on his side, but then not okay on the other. And I'm going to make those points. And then also the cop outs on countless stages that show not to everyone else first, but should have been shown to him, to sincerely say, listen, I believe that this is probably the case, flat earth, probably the case, but I just don't know enough yet. I'm just in doubt about it. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's probably an even more important issue there. You know? But let me get some questions about anything. The nature of all that is a mystery, God. But the reason I say that he didn't see it that way is probably because this is so badly thought out. And I'm going to give you the premise. I'm going to give you the premise by which it's thought out. And I want you to get it based on some type of scientific reasoning. You know what I mean? And it's all out the door. And that's why, I was interviewed on 5% Connection, Peace of the God, Minister Freedom. And I was interviewed on his podcast. Forgot what, I think I was episode 9 or something, and I think one of the problems with that, one of the problems we talked about off air was possibly going on Killer Priest podcast, and he kind of was like, kind of insinuating that he would that he might invite me, or maybe I could go along too and build on this. But I felt like it wasn't this issue, the flat Earth, though. I think it was somebody else that was arguing about the history of the terms Allah and God, and that was that's not our term and stuff like that. But I don't. Again, I don't want to get in. I told him I didn't want to get into arguments like that and debates like that, because whatever we call ourselves is not really the point. It's the efficiency of the name that we use, whatever language it is. It's the efficiency, the correctness of the word, as opposed to the etymological development, like what it once meant and things like that. That's not always as relevant, important, Very well said, Millie. Yeah, it's not about who's right in the debate. It's what's right in the debate. That too. In things like this, in things like the flat Earth concept, it ends up being that one side is going to be right and one side is going to be wrong. And I feel it's funny because people only bring up the moon thing, and the moon this and the moon that, and it also goes into the first science and the first point that I'll make in a little bit. You know what I mean? But I like to hear your comments first, so that way I can get an assessment of what people saw and stuff. Even though people watch this later and get their ideas about it, you know what I mean? But I certainly think that my most important thing, and I know some of the brothers out here will see this point. We're debating about flat Earth. We're debating about whether Allah is the right name of God, or is just some grafted original people, or whatever people think is the Arabic people, because a lot of people say what Arabic is and what the Northern African people are and stuff, and they saw that they don't know shit about who those people were. Um, and they say stuff like that, and they don't really know what those people were. But we're debating stuff, and that's not really the important issue. You know, we're debating things like flat Earth and stuff, and it's just embarrassing to show how much study that we haven't done. You know, it's mind-blowingly blatant. You know how much study that we haven't done, um, and the reasons why certain science is correct, and the reasoning behind what makes science incorrect. You see, so there's something that it's even funny because this year people will remember Killer Priest. I find it mind-blowing to me. People remember Killer Priest this year for these podcasts that he was doing, which are very entertaining. And yet his contribution to the culture, as far as his music and the music he gave out this year and last year and the year before, really the last 3 years, is some of the most impeccable work I've heard recorded the last couple of years. And probably for a career, and not probably, but for a career like his, puts him in legendary status officially. You know, that's the oddity of what we're dealing with here, that it's more important, these terrible debates, because there's no framework of the debate. There's no framework of saying, well, that is verifiable. This is how we will verify stuff. And people are just passing along beliefs. And I'm going to tell you something. I've never seen a degree turn into a belief. And it's being used at the opposite extreme. We don't take things on face value. So every time one wants to disagree with something, all you have to do is just say, "Now we don't take that on face value." And then I say my opposite point, and you say, "No, I don't take that on face value. I don't take that's on face value. I don't bear witness to that on face value." And it's always the same thing. So people are using the same argument of disagreement. You know what I mean? So it's it's a shame. I really think if I was everyone here, I would get Killer Priest's last couple of albums and really enjoy a massive level of artistry, and skip out on some of these podcasts. Like, at least prioritize them. You know what I'm saying? That's how much of an oddity of the world that we're in. You know, somebody has made some of the best records, some of the most unique records and style of lyricism, of in-depth lyricism, that only matches up his previous work. The only person you could find that could actually do that is earlier Killer Priest. And yet he'll be known right now, for that, you know? And see, a lot of love, you said the Bill degree tells us what gravitation is, right? And what Lord Jamal did in that, and see, one thing that he did set up, a lot of love, right, is that he set up the framework. You know what I mean? He set up a framework in the very beginning of the episode of the podcast debate, that lessons in 120 are absolutely wrong. So he already set up a precedent in his argument that quoting a degree is irrelevant. See? Now I'm of a similar stance. I think that degrees can't be quoted and it just says true. But the truth of degrees can be found in two ways. They can be found in literature and study outside of the degree. But actually, degrees can prove each other in connection with each other, and they can bounce off each other and prove points in states of logic. Right? Let's only say this though. The prioritization, I'm gonna go, so let's go through it, right? The prioritization of topic. You see, I'm not an outsider in hip hop. You know what I mean? Um, Not everybody that comes to this classroom cipher, not everybody that I learn with cares about hip hop. But if you know my credentials, you know that I have a long pedigree in hip hop. You know what I mean? I'm part of organizations because of what I've done in hip hop. You know what I mean? I've written books on it. I continue to write books on it. Um and shit. I got songs too. So the interesting thing is that's not the most important issue right now. You know? And so it comes off more embarrassing to because to me I found the debate very irrelevant. That was the first thing. You know, when we build, we're always supposed to be relevant. Like what's important to the people? Like what are we learning about that's important? You know? Some things people find important because they're popular and shit like that. And then we have to debunk those things. You know what I mean? But we know a little bit about it so that we could, at least intelligibly disagree. But this shit right here was totally it's really irrelevant. You know what I mean? It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to the way that we're treated. It's irrelevant to how we feel. Um, but hey, Kareem, you're gonna have to expound on that though. You said he has a great understanding of 120. Um, whatever great understanding he had, if we assume that, he's manipulated it certainly. You know what I mean? Because I'd say that he doesn't. You know what I'm saying? I'd say that he doesn't. I say that it was so weak and misconstrued that he could throw it all out in one fell swoop. Because you think that the degrees he quoted, the ones that he dismissed, he threw away a lot of other degrees too that he did not quote, right? Because he threw out aforementioned build degree, he threw out that one, right? That one's totally irrelevant. That one isn't even true anymore for what he said. But I like to see why you said that. How could someone have a great understanding of 120 and then have a flat Earth stance? Because again, it exposes the idea of a mystery God. Because there is something you're searching for, something that that you can't prove exists. You know what I mean? He absolutely could not prove it. You know what I mean? He unequivocally, absolutely failed in proving it. And the same arguments he used to dismiss Minister Freedom, he used to say, hey, take this on face value, right? This man said that the sun is small and looks similar to the moon in size because you could just look at it. Right? I have two, he Kareem. You know what I mean? And again, my classroom is different, he Kareem. To say the generic build is why I have you go beyond that. And I don't mean you, I mean you rhetorically. You know? Anybody can spout off stuff. Every single episode I've ever seen him build, it's hook, line, and sinker, the party line. You know what I mean? What everybody says, what it says in there. You know what I mean? The real challenge, though, was to take his very controversial thought and be able to build on that. And he miserably failed. You know what I'm saying? He miserably failed. Okay? We have so much science out there that we need to break down. I've made a pin puncture series about all this. I have thousands and thousands of verifiable references. Doctors and scientists, with research every single day. Right? I even have one now that collects all of the information for the children. I didn't make a column for it, but because everybody's in the class here, I'm gonna literally put it in the link now. Okay. Let me see where it is. Right. So this discussion is completely irrelevant to the situation we're dealing with today, because people's scientific. Do you realize that the method by which he is tackling this flat Earth thing is also the method by which so many people that are against the vaccine and against this are staying stuck in and not furthering to prove. You see? So I am in complete disagreement with any of these vaccines. You know what I mean? And if technically, if you want to be, I consider the vaccine a valuable weapon in the wrong people's hands from the beginning. You know what I mean? It's an allopathic medicine of prevention. And so it could be used to destroy before it gets used to heal. And that's exactly what's being used with it. And probably these mRNA vaccines are probably the peak of it. Certainly the peak of it. Why am I saying that? Because what leads most of us, psychological profile to the knowledge of self, is not that we're searching for who is God. That's a sidebar. The truth is that we have a suspension of belief in the oppressor. Let's read that again. Suspension of belief in the oppressor. Okay? He says something, and you automatically know this nigga might be lying. That's the man. He might be lying. Don't bear witness. He's probably lying. You know what I'm saying? He is most likely lying. You know what I mean? Right? Now, what happens though is that they say they got some type of shot, and you say, well, you suspend your belief because, well, back then they did this, that, and the other. Okay. That could be debunked because, well, this is different time now. This is different time now. Or a very famous subtle argument that a lot of white folk, that a lot of our people use. And it's in the back of their mind. You know what that argument is? It's very psychological. It's in their head. Well, they give it to them. They take it themselves. So how could it be bad? Right? Do you realize that this argument isn't just for vaccines? This argument goes for medicines, all types of medicines. This goes for cakes, candies, GMO foods, all of that. Well, they give it to everybody, so it can't be bad because they don't give anything bad to their people. Right? Oh. Okay. You see why suspension of belief in the oppressor is just the beginning. It's a baby step. And Lord Jamal went into a debate, literally, with the baby step move. Okay? One move. That's all he had the whole time. And where I kind of took it off was when he literally kicked everybody else for not having good arguments and kicked everybody out. Because I thought that he muscled his way because of who he is, the respect that Killer Priest has for him, you know, the reverence, which I understand. You know what I'm saying? I understand. Listen, I put a good context of reverence of Brand Nubian. You know, Dark Kim, I was watching Dark Kim for a little bit there. And he was, Dark Kim, he kind of chuckled because he has the knowledge of self way before, so there's not really there. So Dark Kim couldn't really talk about somebody that was influenced by Brand Nubian in that way, but I was, you know what I mean? I was just starting, high school, and I'm from a Brooklyn neighborhood that Sunset Park that, nobody had the knowledge, and we're rapping Brand Nubian songs, and it's slowly being codified and stuff. But throughout my whole life, the entire Brand Nubian has been influential, you know what I mean? In my mind, when I was a revolutionary writer, before I got the knowledge stuff, it was all about revolution. I used to quote Brand Nubian. Come to find my time is letting brothers know the time on the devil and stopping them from eating swine. Right? That's Lord Jamal said that. Right? He said, let me say it again. This embodied everything I was about. Come to find my crime was letting brothers know the time and letting know the devils. You know what I mean? I'm screwing the line up, but it was from Brand Nubian's 1994 album. When we talk about firstborns, I don't know. I might be. I don't know. I actually don't know. Because my life didn't take me back to Sunset to teach people in Sunset. You know what I'm saying? So if we talk about like the firstborn of Sunset, I might be. You know what I'm saying? But and if we talk about, so yeah, I might be. I never thought about that. But I never count how many students I have. And I never count where I am as a student. You know what I'm saying? As far as those things. I know where I am in the lineage of my teachers. You know what I'm saying? Right? But to show you the reverence for Brand Nubian, I got to know Sadat X, relatively well, especially since the 2010s. And when I started building with the Low Lives. And it was 2016 Low Goose on a Deuce, where I got my L's as a low life, where you're literally knighted, right? And when I got my L's, I had to show that I was wearing polo everywhere. Like I had to see polo, I had to go polo, I had to do everything polo, right? Everything had to be polo. You know what I mean? And when I was doing that, I had layers and layers. You know what I mean? I had layers. I was throwing up the layers. And who was there rooting me on? One of the most iconic voices. He got this. The guard got this. You know how the guard do. And it was Sadat X. You know what I mean? So I've always had a great reverence for them. So I understand, for him to muscle the other brothers out and really take on a stance like he's well known, so he must be right about this. You know what I mean? It was I found that disheartening. I found that disheartening. Peace to the God like him. Indeed. Hey, Kareem, you said debating flat out the masculine and feminine aspects of God, I always say, is a waste of time against black conscious guys, especially if you don't know what the fuck you're talking about to disprove him. Indeed. Indeed. I hear you, 793rd. Yeah. Right? What I'm saying is this, right? I thought that was disrespectful. And that's why I stopped watching, because I actually was working out and I realized that my training was taking mad long because it was disrupting me and not letting me float. So I had to let that one go. But here's the interesting thing, right? It's this premise of suspension of belief where he took that to such a level where now he was allowed, because you can't believe anything that the oppressor says, right? The white man. Now, because you don't have to believe anything that they ever said. Now you can use your own face value. So you could say, he could say that the sun is really about the same size as the moon. You know, when you look at it, and that's where you got into the thing where they started to argue about looking through the telescope. You know what I'm saying? Because he literally is insinuating that the telescope that you have in your house doesn't really can't see everything. True. And that the telescope that are larger, those are the white man's telescopes. So they're lying telescopes. They lie to you. Like they must put glass in there so that way they could see lies. And what he doesn't understand is trick knowledge is a living being. Trick knowledge is a living being. Okay? Trick knowledge is a living being. Let me explain that, right? When the devil does trick knowledge, it's a combination of things that are true mixed with things that are false so that they could go in the easiest fashion for their use. That's what trick knowledge is. But what happens with trick knowledge is that when you fashion things and add the lies in for your own gain, you have to constantly adjust for your own gain as well. And so certain things are wrong and certain things are right. Certain premises can be used and certain premises can't be used. And that's where the confusion comes from. So how do we decide what is correct and what is not? This is the conundrum. So when poor Minister Freedom, that is poor righteous teacher Minister Freedom, comes and builds and gives a concept of science, they go, oh, yo, he quoting Newton like he loved him some white man. Quote Newton. Love him some white man. Newton. What they didn't understand is that, and Minister Freedom didn't get to say this because I think in his own mind, it's implicit that this is the way you do it. But the way to go past theory into use, into this is what we know now, and this is what is said, and this is why this is most correct, near correct right now, Earth being round, is because the scientific principles and calculations I will throw at you, they've been calculated. They've been mathematically calculated. You see? So when people go like these experiments, when he goes, look at this. I'll give you an example of the embarrassment of face value he was using. He wanted to have us on face value by amplifying our suspension of belief in the oppressor, amplifying it to illogical levels. So he'll go, yo, Lord Jamal, what about the simple horizon test? You know? Oh no, that's your eye. That's your eye. Your eye can't see that long, so it fools the eye, and that's what happens though. Even though there's no scientist of ocular scientist or anything that studies the eye that'll say that the horizon test is trickery of the eye. And there also wasn't any kind of add-on to the fact that the horizon test works when you film it. So the camera's full too, right? But only the camera only works when we're shooting a video. If we're shooting a video and we're rapping along, mind you, the only foolery is that we're not really rapping the song. We're just lip singing along, but it's a real video. But the horizon test is false. The camera can't do it either, right? What about sunset and people on opposite sides of the planet? Well, people from opposite sides of the planet, they could be lying at the same time. So it's a coordinated effort. Well, what about GPS? Because GPS takes into account the calculations of around Earth. No. Let me add one that wasn't in the debate. Okay? Let me add one that wasn't in the debate. When people circumnavigate out in the sea, they circumnavigate based on the round earth. And they don't use any GPS, they don't use any phones, no technology, and they just use that. And yet they find their way. And so they're circumnavigating based on maps and calculating maps that are based on a round earth cartography. So how the fuck did they come back? But to him, there is no longitude and latitude either. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. You know what I mean? The real test, the real debate that I want to see is to take Lord Jamal and throw him out in the middle of the sea and tell him to come back with your flat ass earth. You know what I mean? And I guarantee you, though, that he probably will not make it back. And if he says, well, another dismissive, now the dismissive arguments get to go. Listen, I've seen enough. I don't know everything, but I've seen enough. I don't know everything, but I've seen enough. That right there is a disqualifier that he's actually using to qualify himself. See, when I debate something and I say, I've seen enough, it means that I've seen enough not to completely believe and to go back and study more so it is definitive. The truth is that the most scientific approach to prove the flat earth is to say that you don't know shit that can debunk what is already out there, but that you don't necessarily believe it. And now you have to go into some engagement to why you don't believe it. Because, honestly, the edges of the earth he described are literally Game of Thrones. He described Game of Thrones. You know what I'm saying? He described the cartoons I've been watching with my daughter the last couple of days, Ice Age. And they had to get away because the ice was melting. Did you know that if it's correct what he's saying, then that means that the earth is fucked. Even worse. Because if it's held by borders of ice, and that there are ledges and borders in the Antarctic, well, the whole earth is basically global warming. So we're all going to fall off this shit. So according to him, the water is just going to fall off and dissipate off the edges, though. So get ready, because I'm about to be, brushed away. But how do you go into a debate where, and you know what's funny is, right? The flat earth concepts that he is teaching is not his own. And you know who they belong to? They belong to other white folk. The flat earth theories that he's expounding on are well detailed. And they're not from our people. They're from other white folk. You know what I mean? From other white folk. You know what was also something for you guys to research? Because I didn't have time to go into my books and research this. But he said that our ancient cultures from ancient Egypt, and I'm assuming that he's saying, and he also said from history. So he's probably saying all the way from the East, ancient Africa, ancient Asia, ancient India, their concepts of the earth were always flat. That not only is pitifully wrong, it shows that he's just saying things now. Right? You're right, Reese. Yeah, the core isn't, but he has. You know who's been farther? What you'd learn more about the Earth, and what bit farther is watch Welcome to the Earth series with Will Smith. Will Smith has gone farther into the earth than Lord Jamal. It's just really embarrassing. You know what I'm saying? It's just really embarrassing, like how badly studied, because he has been saying this for years. And I'm going to give or take, since he's doing his podcast, that he's been saying this for about 3 to 4 years, right? That's what makes it more pathetic to me, because in 3 and 4 years, he should be an expert on all of the concepts of what makes Earth. He should be able to debunk all of the basic sunrise, sunset test, you know? I was embarrassed though. I was like a little kid. I was like, yo, do I delete my brand Nubian records now so that way I can make space on my YouTube music now? I said, nah, because they still have Sadat X, and I got a lot of love for Sadat. I do. And so they stay in there. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm embarrassed though. I'm embarrassed. And it's like, I see it like this. It's not that I hate Lord Jamal and that's why I want to delete his records. It's just that I can't hear anything that stupid without reminding me how stupid it was. It's almost like I would never want to learn and practice playing basketball next to Bill Cartwright. Because if I had to play with Bill Cartwright every day, I might shoot the ball. If you know your 90s basketball, I might shoot the ball like this. You know what I mean? And shoot it all crazy. Or if I was with Lonzo Ball, if you want a new guy, I don't want to play with him. I want to play with Clay and Curry, because I don't want to shoot that you know, I don't want to shoot with my right hand coming from my left shoulder. You know what I mean? I don't even want to hear his voice when I shuffle stuff. It's embarrassing. And again, I have to give a salute to Minister Freedom. You know what Minister Freedom reminded me of? I'm gonna tell the guy this. I don't know if he reminded me of one time I worked for a major magazine, one of the majors, right? And they did a year-end review. Okay, we're gonna do the year-end review tomorrow. We're gonna decide what's the best records, independent, this way, that way, all type of categories, best records of the year. This is a little older, a little earlier. So I come in with my spindle. Remember the spindle? Of all my albums, I collected them all. So I can carry them with me, right? No jackets, no booklets, nothing. I got my spindle, 100 CD spindle, and I put every album I had, whether it was a dub, whether it was the official album, everything I had, I put them in a spindle, and I brought it with me. 100 albums that year. I had everything, and I said, and I put it down. And I said, "Yo, I'm ready. Let's go. Get the tape. Get the music. You think that's the best one? Let's hear some tracks. Let's review which one is the illest. You know what I mean? Let's go through. Let's get it on." Music magazine. The one that everybody said was the one that you read. They all looked at me and said, "No, what are you doing? What are you doing?" It didn't make any sense. I almost got laughed out the building. I said, "We're not going to go into these records." The truth is that we didn't really hear all those records anyway, so it doesn't even matter. We're just going to go with the ones that we wrote about and that we kind of remember the most. What if you made a mistake? What if you overrated a record and you realize after a couple of months, at the end of the year, you realize that this wasn't really the shit here. You know what I mean? Like you could, Nah. So I got relegated to do the indie section. And if you really do your research, you know what year it was. And that was it. But that's Minister Freedom. Minister Freedom came with a spindle of information. He had his 100 CDs of builds. And they said, "We don't use that kind of knowledge here, sir. That's the white man's knowledge." But see, you know what the difference was? That God wasn't bringing white man's knowledge. He was bringing all of the information that to the best of his ability he had studied have been what? Mathematically proven. Mathematically, you say the earth weighs 6 sextillion tons, it has been weighed by mathematical equations, right? Based on distance and times. Now, all of a sudden, the light doesn't travel that way, sound doesn't travel that way. Do you realize that the distance between the earth and the sun is not computed because someone said, holy shit, that's really far. You can't just say it's 1,000 miles. What about 2,000? Let's go with a crazy number. I don't want to give it 100,000 because we got other planets and shit, right? Let's go with 93. Let's go with 93. That's not how it's computed. It's computed by light. The distance of light and the traveling of light. To have a field day with this shit. You know what I mean? A field day with this shit. But now the sun is 30 miles away. Did you realize then that the first thing I thought in my mind, though, right? That if the sun is 30 miles away, then poor little Yakub is somewhere floating in space going, I'm right here. He's in the middle of this shit. You got the sun. I don't know where the moon is, but it's like about the same size. And you got poor little Yakub 20 miles outside the holy city of Mecca. Because the whole shit is flat, so I don't know where he is now. I don't know where he is. You see? The way he talked about it, you could bang into the sun. You know? You could bang into the sun the way he was talking about it. You hit your head up, though, you get a little burn here. You get a little burn. You bang into the sun. You know? He said it's about 30 miles away. You know why? You could see it. You could see it. It looks right there. You could see it. That's a rhyme for me, right? 793. I got my twin brother. He lives in LA. He said, damn, I miss my brother. It's like he's farther away from me than the sun. You know? Shit. We got ball players that could jump to the sun now. You know? The sun is definitely not a limit. We got brothers that got vertical leap higher than the distance he gave. I'm going to tell you something about gravity, right? Because he also said gravity was false, right? And why gravity is a theory. This also shows lack of study, right? Do you want to know why gravity is a theory? The reason gravity is a theory, right, is because so much of the universe is dark matter and dark energy that the force of gravity is so powerful, right, that it's very difficult to equate it with other forces, of the other strong and weak forces, right? So it's hard to make that universal theory that they've been trying to look up. Gravity is very difficult to study. But the truth is that the atmosphere of the earth exists. And that atmosphere of the earth, though, is what is containing gravity. So even if you said that gravity wasn't true, you'd have to admit that it is the atmosphere of the earth that causes some type of pressure within this cipher that we call the earth that is keeping everything grounded to a certain level. And this whole thing about, I laugh because, he keeps talking about a wet ball. And it's like buoyancy, the science of water pressure. I mean, it's like he studied absolutely nothing. It's like he read nothing. From those 4 years, he's read 0 books because it's all white man's books. It's all white man's books. That's embarrassing. I'm fucking embarrassed. I'm embarrassed because he also is in line with things I say. I don't agree. See, and that's what I'm saying. You go down the wrong path, though, even when somebody is right and they give no proofs. You go with him. He'll tell you that this virus is not out there. He'll tell you that the vaccines are shit. He'll tell you that the mask is shit. Don't worry about it, blah, blah, blah. And he's still alive, so he's doing great. But you know what? He gave you no science. So everything that he said might be in line with things I've said, but it's not the same thing. It's completely different. When he says, I'm not wearing a mask, is it because he just doesn't feel cool? Or is it because he studied how small, how many microns are coronaviruses in general? How small in measure of microns is the virus? And that a cloth mask blocks absolutely nothing, right? Not when it comes to that. But it also, right? Did he study that the studies out there that show that if you have a mask on, what you are definitely collecting is florobacteria that is leaving your mouth and collecting there and possibly reinfecting you, and most likely, as these times of years where people get more sicker feeling. That's what he's not telling you. He'll just tell you they told me to do it, and I don't believe the white man. And then so everything has to pass eye test. So he'll believe that guns are necessary for our protection, and go out, do videos about shooting, get your shot on, learn how to shoot, blah, blah, blah. Because he got the eye test. But what about this test? What about the further study test? You know what I'm saying? What about that? The scientific principles that show that the earth is round, that show that it rotates, that show that it is 93 million miles away from the sun. Where was the respect to say, I'm going to study all these things? No, it's always they're cunning. Do you realize the cunning that you have put behind that devil to say stuff like this? You know what I'm saying? I've seen these videos. I've seen flat earthers be on a beach and they do the horizon test and they refuse to bear witness. They want to be right. They want to give a logic to things. And if they were real scientists, they would have studied the science that is out there and then attack it by saying, how do I compute those calculations that prove the earth is round? I'm going to learn how to do them. I didn't see any of that. It's pretty embarrassing. And when I was saying about a 5%er, you're not being a 5%er, not because you disagreed with the lesson, but because you actually engaged in disagreement with something that you poorly studied. And it's egregious. It's really egregious. You know what I mean? Right? And he's riling us up. You know, you already knew he was the one that had the least amount of information because he's the most emotional. You know? I never seen something so pitiful that I can remember. When we look back on 2021, this may rank above the pitiful display that Dipset gave. You know, yeah. And the thing is that all of 120 is irrelevant. 793rd, right? All of it. It's all irrelevant because he had immediately started the debate by dismissing it. And by doing that, it was. It's not part of the discussion. And then anything else that's used now is white man's knowledge. See? I think that and I don't really think there's anything else to say about that. You know what I mean? Um, I knew that the debate would be useless. Um, there's nobody was engaged in the calculations that are being thrown out. That's how you debunk something. That's how you say, listen, I disagree with this highly held thought. You know, but he didn't. He gave us face value arguments. You know, and he used white man's knowledge dismissals. You know, it was pitiful. It was pitiful that you know that that they really think they did research, but they got overburdened by the calculations. You know, the miscalculations. Not even calculations of any sort, but the explanations. And it's where you fall victim as a 5%er or anybody of in a pursuit of knowledge. You know, there's a you have to be able to gauge what is a build, what are proofs, and what are explanations. Because this is a pitfall that could happen to anybody that deals with this knowledge. You know, what happens is that um we're dealing with what? You know what I mean? What are we dealing with? You know? When we're dealing with this, we're dealing with logic. The logic of mathematics, supreme mathematics, right? When you don't take that into consideration and you don't deal with you don't deal with that type of logic, um then you're just dealing with what got you there, and that's anger. You know what I'm saying? Anger. you know. And honestly, I've always felt like this is just a target market, you know. I think this is like a great issue for him to be different and to literally have his own knowledge in his own lane. And that's why I find most of it disingenuous, you know what I mean? I really do, you know. Yeah, but I'll take a pause here. Any other thoughts and shit like that about it? People had any questions about it, you know, or any thoughts about it, you know, that since some of yous got farther along than I did. And the plus lesson on planning, I'm gonna give that out. Um, I'm gonna give that out next week. Gonna add some stuff to it, review it. Hopefully, I can update it more than I think I can. You know what I mean? I'd like to. Um, you know, if I can update it more, then it'd be really nice. You know what I mean? What I'm gonna go through is the plus lesson that really goes today. You know what I mean? Actual information. How do we gather information? You know what I mean? Right? Source material, things like that. You know, so this plus lesson I have, if you want it, you can email me. I will give it to you. You know what I mean? Um, I'll go through this plus lesson. Any of your questions, any of your riffs about this whole thing, anything that you want to ask about it. You know what I'm saying? Um, and then you know, I'll certainly send it out to everyone. There also people sent me some emails and stuff, and I haven't gotten to them this week. You know what I mean? Um, this has been a little bit, not completely, but a little bit of a vacation for me. So spending time with my daughters. You know what I mean? So I didn't really write anything or do much. You know what I'm saying? And even with my training, I've been resting my legs somewhat. You know. So but I will get to these emails. You know that people are sending me. But yeah, this plus lesson is called the justice curriculum. Why did I name it that? It's got 10 things. So I said, to me, it was justice. So I just named it that. And the curriculum. So I said this in the introduction to this plus lesson. The study of many disciplines does not make man righteous, yet it greatly propels the ease by which they made them realize themselves as such and build greater. Just as the most oppressive societies have fortified themselves with the study of many disciplines, our study of a versatile curriculum will develop our framework of ideas, potential, and self awareness. The following 10 subject areas are beginning in this broad range of study that are necessities of culture. Into to what I think. You know what I mean? Like they're the beginners, the beginning of it. And we're the true and living. God, true and living earth. And I think that we have to be well rounded. And I think we have very weak palates. For all the information we have access to, I think we have very weak palates. And I'm saying that not as the 85 in general, I'm saying as us, 5%. You know, I find 5% in general has a very weak palate, and nothing exposes that more. It is very simple to say, Lord Jamal's not one of us, this and that. But he literally has gone down the wrong path. And it is not a path for us to say that would never happen to us, but it is exactly the type of path that we would fall victim to, where our hatred, our anger at the oppressor forces us to suspend belief in anything that we encounter, forces us to dismiss all deeper study, forces us to dismiss reading anything, and really developing no ability to discern right from wrong, and being able to do what the most important skill set that the Father taught us, to extract the best part. That's exactly what he meant. To extract the best part. The things that are true, the best, right? To leave what is the trick knowledge, the worst, and to actually be able to see where something is leading into and needs further study, the poor part. This is what the Father was teaching. This is what he was living, and this is what he was teaching. And that's why he spent so much time saying we're neither pro-black nor anti-white, because there's no debate where the Father would ever say that Minister Freedom could give out a calculation that has its proof in mathematical calculations. And so Minister Freedom is allowed to continue on, right? Because of that. The Father would never deny that, you know? And that's embarrassing. And that's embarrassing. And I won't have that happen because our palates are so weak. You know what I'm saying? This first one is hygiene, but I'm going to take it to another respect and say hygiene/health. One of the reasons that we can be pumped up with vaccines is because we don't know anything about health. Not a damn thing. The populace had no idea that there were other options. And so they told us on TV, you cannot treat this. The only thing that'll save us is a vaccine. If we get too sick and almost near death, you go to the hospital, we do what we can, but there's no early treatment, there's no outpatient treatment. So you go back home and you just get sicker. And that was all a lie. There was verifiable proof. The hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, and countless other medicines, but those being the cheapest ones that have no possibility of being patented. They have patents that have run out. They're over-the-counter medicines. They're cheaper than hell. And so those are no good, because if they exist, you can't have a vaccine come out. Where's the research for this? Then we look for the countless and countless studies. The so-called research, like the Lancet article that was saying that ivermectin was no good. Did anybody do the research and find out that a week later they had to retract the article? But news on TV doesn't report retractions. They never do. I know because I've written articles that misprinted things I've said. Nobody reads a retraction. In fact, sometimes you can't even get a retraction, right? I wrote about J Live when he was a young coming up, right? First album, debut album. We joked around. Scott Justice, J Live, one of the greats out of the dark ages, the 2000s. He said, God, make sure they don't say I'm a Muslim. I put that damn thing in double XL and I open it. First time I open it, when it's print, it says, J Live, a Muslim out of Brooklyn, New York. And I was like, oh shit. I went back into that magazine office and I caused hell. I said, you got to write a retraction. We got to write a retraction. Yeah. It's wrong. It has to be retracted because it's wrong. Well, we may not be able to fit it, but it's wrong. You made an error that the artist cares about. Never did it. See? That's right. SUNY Albany. That's right. One of the great Medina MCs that people don't talk about. Right? Had two of the most fun projects this year. Right? Look up J Live. You know what I mean? But so I'm saying all that to say, like, when it comes to our health, you cannot rely on moderation. I do a little bit of bad, I do a little bit of good, whatever. No. You have to take your health as seriously as you take this knowledge. We take in everything serious that goes into our mind, but not much so what goes in our body. We fast, but we don't realize that the fasting was to detox our body, and also more so to develop the discipline to be able to say, I will wait until I eat the best things. And we don't do that. We don't do that. We haven't used the fast correctly. Because if you need to fast and you think the fast is just to get you off pork, though, then you're on, again, baby steps. Baby steps. The pork should be eliminated quick fast. That should be easy. That the what the getting rid of the pig in a 5%'s life is a free throw. But we have to start hitting those 3-pointers, though. We have to hit the long shot. The long-term shots. And when I say hygiene, I said, I wrote, in a supposedly civilized advanced society, hygiene is often at its lowest. A possible reason for that, aside from the awkward change it is for the Caucasian westernized world, really is that we do not view it as a constant study. We may adapt certain measures as they come to us or flow with social mores. If, say, someone properly uses a tissue to open a bathroom door that reeks with diverse fecal matter particles. However, we must constantly protect ourselves from the environment through a developing awareness and knowledge of hygienic practices and study to fortify the home with less chemical pollutants and cleaner rituals. This virus really wasn't stopped the first time because of the vaccine. It never was out. It wasn't even stopped because of the proper medicines I mentioned, because they were being outlawed as we spoke. It was being stopped because people were being more hygienic. It wasn't stopped because people wore masks. It was because people cleaned themselves, had clean hands, right? Buses and trains were actually cleaned. Actually cleaned. People tried to keep a little bit cleaner, throw away garbage in their proper place and things like that. Hygiene. That's it. That's pretty much it. So, right, in practice. I see you talking. Practice, right? So the hygiene, you know what I mean? Doing better for yourself, studying those moments, keeping things clean, orderly. Wherever you build, keep that workstation orderly. You train, you work out, you keep that orderly, you keep that clean. Everything clean. I go out and train outside. My little area, I train at Fort Wadsworth in Staten Island, where I'm out here. I clean my area and make sure it's clean. I don't live there. It's not my area. I don't own it. But when I train there, I clean it. Not just for fashion. You clean your stuff. You keep your clothes clean. You keep everything clean. You study it. You study the science on it. You buy vegetables, you buy fruit, you double, triple wash them. You get yourself a vegetable wash and you rinse them out vigorously. Hygiene. Now the hygiene is then leaking into and extending into healthier habits, healthier foods. You're cleaning what's outside of you. Shouldn't you put what's inside of you clean as much as possible? You develop strategies of health. You eat something that's not right and exact, you come back, eat something that is right and exact. You know what I mean? Always important. You know what I mean? Always important. Right? What else we have here? Last week I went through some of these. The diversity of the curriculum. I said the second one I put music. While we may enjoy the latest pop craze and shuffle 500 ditties on our iPod, this is old. I wrote this a long time ago. Music is a language of resistance and expression that our people oppressed the last 6,000 plus years have developed wonderfully. To love music is to learn of it, to expand the palette of sounds we hear also broadens the ability to hear and develop new ideas. This is truly what I think, and truly how I see it, and truly what I've studied. And that means that when I say I've studied it, others have agreed with this. To love music is to learn of it, to expand the palette of sounds we hear, also broadens the ability to hear and develop new ideas. So, in the societies we live in, with so many original people from all over the world, we ought to know these other languages they have expressed themselves with beyond the radio's narrow dialect, right? And so last week I gave some ideas in different genres where you could go, how you brought it about, how you expand that. But you see this with children though. The more that they expand their palette, like let's say with sounds, if they learn languages, then they start to learn. They learn languages easier because they have more of a grasp of sound and languages and abilities, right? This is something to take into account as you listen to different types of music. You expand your ears. What do you acclimate to? What isn't? When you listen to jazz, what do you understand? What don't you understand? You know what I mean? Right? What sounds good and what doesn't? Out of two pieces of music that people say is classic material, or people have, and then you say, why do they say it's classic material? Right? And then try to trace though. Do I hear what they hear? Or am I hearing the things that they are hearing in this? Right? It isn't always that it sucks and they're lying. It oftentimes can even literally be that you don't have the palate, the developed ear to hear certain things. Okay. And this will extend to all things. It helps you be a better listener, to understand the nuance in people's voices and sounds and the way that they talk to you. It's real important because we try, what makes us a 5%er is the way that we communicate the knowledge that we have. You see, you're not a 5%er unless you go teach it, which means that you have to actually what? Build in sound. You have to actually communicate this. You're not a 5%er if you don't go communicate it. See? So how do we go do that? Right? It's important in all things. The third one is important. I wrote a little bit about it, but it's really what's plaguing everything today. I wrote news. From the politics of your immediate residential area to the world stage, we must seek out legitimate news sources and study them. We must know more than the paltry 15-minute broadcast at 11 p.m. of tabloid specials. This is one of the ways to understand the people we love and seek to build with. You know, it's funny, I mentioned like just 11 o'clock news, but now people think that news is diverse because there are many stations of news only. And that's where we get fooled. So we have to look at what is the platform for the news. What are the source material that they give us for the news? You know what I mean? How do we get news of things? You know what I mean? When do we get news of things? You know? Our people are so used to learning news late that we've actually become addicted to the documentary. You know? I'll learn more about this though after it has already happened and affected so many people. And we look back in retrospect. This is sad. This is sad, but that's really like a documentary style of doing research, you know, where we only know how to get the news from things that have been long gone past. It's one of the reasons why a lot of the vaccine companies won't release their ingredients for at least another 50 years. That's a healthy timetable to find out something, right? So the news sources you use, right? You have to have a diverse amount. You know what I mean? And you have to have a discernment of them, just like you have of any teacher, right? Very important. Very important. I am on a roll here, I guess, because nobody's asking any questions. Okay. The fourth one I said is sciences. I mean, it's obvious to us, we would think, but it often isn't. And clearly, obviously, it isn't, right? With the debacle we just saw. The sciences of biochemistry, quantum mechanics, and mathematics are key to a knowledge of self. But working to study all the sciences slowly and usefully will always give more sense to the universe we have created. Remember, we need to know the sciences, meaning we need to see the mathematical proofs, the logical connections, and why these connections are being made or proposed, and all those things. You know what I mean? We don't really do that enough. You know what I mean? We're not breaking things down enough. We're not studying them enough. So we come with very unschooled answers, right? So this science is the study of our inner workings. You know, how can we not study this daily? You know, you should always have some book that is in your rotation about the sciences. You know, always. Right? All right, no questions still. Let's keep going. I didn't have to link health with hygiene because I had it here as number 5. So you know that's okay though. You know, Kareem, I think it's all of that. The shape of the galaxy, the planet's poles that has confused some people. All of that. You know what I mean? The thing is that he would have to debunk the calculations that are used for the shape of the galaxy. Not just say you don't believe it. You see? Because let's say if people use math to the best of their ability to gauge the shapes of the galaxies and it was off, that doesn't mean it's disingenuous. It doesn't mean it was devilish. You know, it just means that they couldn't compute it right. And that's where science is always at. Science is always ever computing. You see? You know, I don't put too much stock in the validity of why he's disagreeing with around Earth and going with a flat Earth. I really think that it's a marketing ploy. It's a way to be different, and to be his own Robert Walker. You know what I mean? Where, the school of Jamar. And make his name that way. Because when you come into a debate that ill-informed, it becomes pathetic. Mr. Cow, absolutely, absolutely. And what we also are studying always, Mr. Cow, is that we have to start to understand with the subjects we study how science is computing, so that way we can make it doesn't all work, and why doesn't it all work? What can be done? Because that's how you become a scientist, by making your recommendations. See? The truth is, when it comes to the round earth proving it, all you can say is that there are calculations that they also could do, because we could always disagree with pictures. I don't bear witness to any pictures. I don't bear witness to go out there, all of that. we could always say, oh, that technology was already here and stuff. Again, suspension of belief, you can flip the argument any kind of way. I have a couple of books, RP Reese. I have to look through them. There's no book in my head that pops out in general. What's a great introduction to the earth sciences? Because the earth sciences are a lot of different things. So I don't know if it's one, if it's one book. You know what I mean? Right? Because you have the studies of the atmospheres, the biosphere, the hydrosphere. Um, and so some books can pass that, some books you can get focused on that, you know. But a good quality beginner book or startup book to give you a broad framework. I gotta think about that. I gotta think about that. 7930. You said early, exactly. Trolling deluxe. Yet talking a lot of other things. Too far shown is different by basis for trying to influence and teach whatever it is that he's trying to as a brand. Yeah, yeah. A lot of love. You said tribe of Jabbar. Tribe of Jamar. That's sad though. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I almost balked when I read that. Mr. Kyle, you said from that perspective, it makes sense to believe what you see, including the moon being the size of the sun, a sort of reset. But then one needs to be willing to do the research that follows. Yeah, and there was no research. There was no research. You know what I mean? No matter what he would have to say, the Earth is whether you say it's flat or whether you say it's round, you'd have to admit that it's very, very big, and it would take an intense, large, very large, powerful sun to keep it this warm. And by the theory, he has to say it's 30 miles away and has to reduce its potency because there's a lot of cold on the Earth too. So he's copping out by saying it's just, I guess it's just weak, but that wouldn't prove the consistency of seasons. You know what I mean? You would always have spots that would be hot, but it would always consistently get colder in the same area, and it would never fluctuate. So just like what we have Earth today is places that are always hot, but we have seasons in so many of the other areas, just like New York City, right? So it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing because this is school grade stuff. You know, we literally can see the things that he didn't study. We literally can see how well he learned in school by what he did. You know what I mean? And we could see how serious he took this issue um, as a scientific endeavor by the way he debated, because he's had this for years and he debated it like an angry kid. You know, you've seen people go into opinionated debates about sports with more research than he did. You know what I mean? It's embarrassing. You know, he went into this like if it was a sports debate. And it wasn't, and it was embarrassing. Holy shit, it was embarrassing. Just really, really terrible, terrible. You know, one of the most talented, really hip hop musicians. Um, not a very dexterous MC by any mean, but a very influential one. Much like the way he's not as skilled as Chuck D by any means, but had the intensity and potency of Chuck D on many levels. That's right. That's right. And we did before too, but I'm saying this now because it just bugs me out. Someone who did make music. The album I was quoting was from the 1994 album, Everything Is Everything, and that was mainly produced by him, and it was some great work. Able to find next level artists before they become big, which is hard to do, like Dead Prez, and you know, for whether you like him or not, though he is very unique. Stove God cooks. Um, even though he's concept wise a one trick pony, and that's a problem, but definitely a charismatic talent. So many gifts, and just wasting it with this. It's all ego. It's all ego. It's all ego. It's embarrassing. Very embarrassing. So we get into the next one, and I think when I had done this, I had separated hygiene and health because I wanted the hygiene practice to go different than what you put into your body. The hygiene is how you deal with the outside world, how you clean the outside world, and that health is how you clean the inside. And I wanted that specifically to be highlighted. And in the health one, he said the diet is something to constantly work on from the inner to the outer. If the proposed healthier lifestyle is adopted, a vegan living foods diet, that's what I've always advocated, is embraced, then one can no longer eat ignorantly. That's right. This diet doesn't work eating ignorantly. You have to know what you're doing. One must be a student of ingredients, preparation, and recipes. We must learn what things we may be putting in our body, how to prepare them, so that we may have a supreme control and learn to express ourselves through our food with recipes that make food taste great to us. This is why the vaccines are not a political issue. They're a health issue. You know, we have a right to know exactly what goes into our bodies and make sure that everything that goes into our bodies is fully tested, right and exact. And with the case of the children, um, they have to prove that the precautionary principle, you know, is in effect in this case with medicine. Precautionary principle. You know what I mean? Does it do more harm than good? Right? Do they need to take this medicine to to be safe? And the answers are no, of course. Right? So, I would hope that flat earth debates and all that kind of stuff is not the main issue. The main issue is, how we live and how we're dealing with that. And if we debated these issues like that, then we would continue to falter. And the fact that Lord Jamal gets traction with this, it also shows that not only our 5% are being misled to think, and people are being misled to think that the 5%, um, what that means to take things on face value just means disagree with whatever white people say. And our way of life is so much more profound than that. You know what I'm saying? This is my way of life. I've lived this for over half my life, and I've represented this at the school over half my life. At the school, these classes I'm doing here though, because I couldn't get to the school, but I'm representing the school every time I build on here. People can take this and they can say this represents Allah's school of Mecca. This represents the gods on earth, and that's not a way of study, and not it is not a way to gain deeper spirituality at all in any kind of sense. Meaning in tune with who you are as the true and living God on earth. That's all. That's all I'll take spirituality as, because I won't take it in anything else. Right? It's embarrassing. The sixth one on this list of curriculum is training. I said the training that one chooses must be studied. Brothers must study how to increase their muscle mass with loads. Brothers must study how to increase their muscle mass without loads of whey and sugar to merely mold fat. If we engage in a sport, we must learn more of the sport and what its benefits are. We must also learn to strengthen our bodies and avoid injury. I wrote that about training, but this training also engages into, and I'll expand it eventually, to study. How you study. How do we train our mind? Right? How do we train our mind? What is the way that we study? What are the methods? We have to develop a method because this is terrible. This is terrible. The seventh one in this is something that has plagued our young people with all these trans real. Whatever I feel like, that's what I am. And the seventh one is identity. The study of identity is a key to successful knowledge of self, so that a title of God on earth and a righteous name are not merely fancy claims. We must work on noticing belief and letting it go with truth and become aware of the cliches we have labeled ourselves with and let them go. This is a lifelong study. Doesn't this apply to what we saw in that debate? See, in that debate, though, it was about Lord Jamal showing that he is the shit and he is advanced, right? Minister Freedom was going there humbly to represent us all and say, I have actual science that has been calculated, been measured. It has calculated studies. And before we disagree with it, we're going to have to do those studies. Or we're going to have to see if the logic of those studies don't pan out. And the thing is that they don't. They don't. There is nothing found to go against it. The fact that the earth is round is not a theory. The fact that when they said things like gravity is a theory, right? That's misleading. It's because there's so much more to learn about gravity, and it is very difficult to measure. You see? But the actual presence of a force that is causing that in this atmosphere is real. And gravity is also called gravitation in mechanics, you know what I mean? And all it means is the force of attraction, acting between all matter. And the truth is that the reason people get confused is because it fluctuates everywhere, The theory of the unified theory is what is very difficult to reconcile gravity in it, because it's such a weak force. However, no one has ever said, and that was a misnomer that I think it was his physical reality was saying, was out of touch with reality, was saying that it's a theory. It's not a theory. It's just that it's described by the theory of relativity. But nobody has been able to debunk the theory of relativity. In fact, all science ends up being a theory. All science. If we were to take the black man being God as a scientific pursuit based on scientific methodology, it would be like a theory as well. It'd be one that was constantly proven. See? The fact that they call it theory just means that they're going to keep studying it to try to disprove it or expand it. It is not set in stone. Right? And that's the way it goes with science. That's actually what makes it scientific, because people can continue to research it. Right? All right. Yeah, but he's not going to show and prove. He's definitely not going to show and prove. A lot of people wouldn't have said this, they wouldn't have said this if our elders were here. And so now we have to step up and call out bullshit, What's the eighth thing? Well, what are we talking about? It. Pedagogy. The science of teaching is also in the science of learning. Learning how to teach, we must also learn how we actually learn. What pitfalls we may be prey to become more evident the more familiar we are with the many techniques. Also, learning to share sincerely is in the judgment of what ought to be shared. This is to be studied. Study your pedagogy. Study pedagogy, the way you teach, how you learn. Because then you would see that it was fraudulent what he did. And for our nation, it was absolutely disrespectful. 1,000 fucking percent. You know? And it comes simply by doing one thing: going into fucking places where you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. It's real simple. You've wanted it to be true, and now you only read literature like that. And it's all bullshit. We conspiratorialize the white man so much that we have given him more power than he actually has. That's peace, Mr. Carr. I look forward to that. I look forward to that. Okay. We're almost finished with this, and oh. Number 9 is talent. We must engage in many disciplines to find and hone our talents. It is through our talents that we will create sharings for the betterment of all. We must be aware of our talents with a humility that does not overrate them, yet does not underplay them as well. You know, one thing in my classroom is that I'm trying to teach you the knowledge of self, but it is done by actively engaging in the talents you have to see the scope of all that you can do, you know? And if you're not trying to find new talents, test out other talents, you know, see what you can do, then you're not taking advantage of what you can do. You know what I mean? This is important, highly relevant, you know, extremely relevant. The greatest student, yes, wise, 793rd. You said being wise enough to admit that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, while then being able enough to want to learn. The greatest student is one who's willing to be wrong about anything at any given moment. You know what I'm saying? I can't tell you the amount of things that I am in the middle of learning. It is insurmountable. It is endless. You know what I mean? And that's why you need to be a reader. You need to read books. You need to read lots of books, because it's a immediate evidence of things that you don't know. Immediate proofs that there is too much to learn. You know what I mean? What I'm reading from is my own plus lesson that I wrote called the Justice Curriculum. Okay, so this is an old plus lesson I wrote, and I thought it would be relevant now, you know, because it embarrassed me that we're so badly cultured. We talk about culture, but we're so badly cultured, meaning that we don't know that many things, and we don't know how to develop our talent in many different subjects and areas. And I always like to read this. That way, we could start. It links with my planning lesson that I'm going to teach next week, because whatever we're engaging in to succeed our goals, we also have to have a framework of constantly studying broad-based subjects, so that way we become the true and living God, where we know these things and we don't just think, you know. I've had the privilege and the challenging privilege to teach at a law school all these years. And it's a school where if you say you teach there, you have to be able to answer questions about any and everything. And this is what led me to write this plus lesson, because I actually have to know a lot of shit. I have to know about a lot of different things. You know what I mean? And I can't just read about and study the things that I enjoy to do. I have to also read the things that I need to know and ought to know, right? And that becomes important, you know. So this is why I'm doing this, you know. And we're already up to number 9 out of 10. Number 10 is one that nobody would think of. It is abstract, but I said love. And studying it through the relationship of family, the creation of God and earth is the reality of all things. We must study whom we share our deepest intimacy with, not merely expect to be loved, but develop self into a person worthy of love. This is done with studying the ideas of intimacy, relationship, care, sincerity. This was good. This is what builds a nation and makes it more than just a collection of people that bear witness to a controversial truth, or and a collection of people that could prove a truth that most do not know. Right? This is important. This is important. You know what I mean? Right? And look, I have children. I end up being able to study love every day through my 2 children. But I made these 2 children in relationships I was with women over 10 years each. So this idea of studying love and studying relationships, it's something that I learned and continue to learn from, even as technically I can't say I mastered it. You know what I'm saying? If mastering it was to be in the relationship still, right? Right? So this is always a constant study, because you need to know how you will love the world, you know? Because I don't want you to overreach and just start to deal with ego. And that was the thing about Lord Jamal that bothered me so much, is that what he was doing was so based on ego. You know what I'm saying? It was so based on ego, it was embarrassing, you know? Right? And and so those are the 10 things, and that's the plus lesson, you know. It sounds simple, but if you try to say, okay, what am I going to do for number 1? What am I going to do for number 2 and 3 and 4? You realize that this is very difficult to keep up with, you know? Right? Rome Fetty, hey, you said, how did my physical day go? Well, my brother, Rome Fetty, thank you for asking. My born day was on the 21st, so it was on Tuesday, right? Um, I have had this week off with my kids, so being with my children, especially my little one, I took this as like the one time of the year where I train a lot less. So out of this week, I only will train 3 days a week, and that is over one day the least amount of days I've worked out in a week, all year. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? I even treated myself to what did I eat? I had these chocolate sunflower cups that Trader Joe's got. You know, some vegan shit. But that's peace, Rome. Okay, that was your email, Rome. Okay. Ah, okay. That's peace. Appreciate that. Appreciate that, definitely. Okay. I didn't put together that Rome is Jerome. Okay. Got you. But yeah, it was peace. You know what I mean? It was peace. You know what I mean? I can't even complain. You know what I'm saying? Um I enjoy myself. I've been playing games, all that kind of stuff. So, you know what I mean? So it's been nice. Very nice. You know? Right? And you know, I'm in the middle of showing them why we don't deal with Christ Mass, but still got them excited that they're gonna get some gifts. You know what I mean? Give them a lot of toys for all the things that they did. So it's fun. You know what I mean? But you know, I'm gonna end this class early today because I gave a lot of information. I think I railed enough against Lord Jamal. I you know, again, these last couple of weeks have been very difficult because of some family illness and stuff, and that's why I've been teaching from here. But and working on a project, and the project is really my Reel of 2021 book. Working on that is very difficult because it's a lot of albums, and um, it's going to be very complete. You know, it's not just haphazardly put together. Um, so next year, classes will consistently be from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at a law school in Mecca. I will still do this. Uh, you know what I mean? Um, you know what I mean? And next week, I may be at the school. I expect to be at the school. But I definitely will be held in class. You know what I mean? Um, again, this the end of the year is a lot of work for me to complete all of my goals. So like certain goals I have, like reading a certain amount of books. I reach that. I always read at least 52 books a year. I reached that um, a long time ago. I reached that in September, but uh, writing 1,000 pages in my journal. Uh, I reached that. I reached that about 2 months ago because I was writing extra this year and there. But some of the actual book projects, though, I need to get that done. So um, next week's class, I may or may not be at the school, but I definitely will be online here. And if anybody has any questions, I got a great piece about being. I still want to hear for the students that I'm really engaging with offline. That's when you become my student. You know what I mean? And before that, you're just really learning from me via these lectures, which is fine. Which is fine. You know, I really want my students to write that are learning digitally here, and only via the digital, and contact me offline, but not in person, to really write me something about they how they expect to be a student digitally and the worth that they intend to bring to it. It's important because it's not only me, but it's also you, the student, that is setting the standard for the 5% to learn it this way and learn it value. Why would we waste our time just continuing to teach here and say, well, it's not the same thing? Well, let's do something to go above and beyond to make it worthwhile, though. It isn't the same thing, but to make it worthwhile, because the whole world ought to know this, and it can't just be, somebody has to learn it this way, right? Somebody has to learn it this way. So that's part of the homework assignments. You know what I mean? I want to see like a little essay, something written to me about how you expect to be that type of student, that worthwhile student. You know what I mean? Um, you know, so that'll really help. You know what I mean? Indeed, light visible, it had to be. Yeah, it's something I study a lot. Like I said, I'll say it now. Like I have given most of my life to women that are not with me anymore. You know what I'm saying? So one could see like love is not real. Like you can't really have a loving relationship and this and that. And I'm very idealistic, but I also think that we create our own world. So we shouldn't give up on love. It'll be there in some kind of measure. You know, right? Right. Supreme being God. I'm a little confused by what you wrote there. CFing. I'm not getting your abbreviations. I'm a little stuck here. I'm not sure what you're abbreviating there. But today's class I wanted to be a short 2 hours, my usual 3 hours. And that's why I went in straight on the realities. Do not look at Lord Jamal as someone who's never a 5%er and he's ousted because he did something wrong. Do not look at it religiously. He disagreed with Allah's teachings, and that's why he's not right and exact. Anybody should be able to learn these lessons. You have to challenge them and disagree with them. The reason that he's wrong is because of the positions he took of ego, the way that he brought no information, the way that he uses arguments hypocritically. We don't deal with face value, so we're not going to deal with anything the oppressor says. But then we're going to deal with face value as far as the eye test, and the sun looks like it's pretty close. I'm going to tell you something. That shit don't look 30 miles away. Right? I see that now. Okay. All right. But with that note, try to see that, because we could get into also a criticized Lord Jamal, and also like we're the way like we're the way it's supposed to be done. He's the one that's wrong, and we're so dope. We're right and exact. You know what I mean? But I'm telling you that the mistakes that he made and is making is something that any of us can make, because having this knowledge of self and saying that we're the true and living God is one of massive ego. It's very difficult to handle. You know what I mean? Very difficult to handle. So, you know, and I'd love to build with Lord Jamal one day. You know what I'm saying? Um, but not if he's gonna be like that, though. You know, not if he's gonna be like that. You know, like I said, though, like some of the stuff he's saying, like in person, at least the fights. You know what I mean? That's not good. You know. All right. So on that note, I'll let everybody go. This is very concentrated 2 hours. Um, I tried to give like the arguments and the reasons why, not just scientific. There was no science thrown, but also the types of misreasoning and misunderstanding and the way that Lord Jamal was using it. It's a study in that. You know what I'm saying? And also really a nod to like this shouldn't be the best thing that kill a priest for in 2021. The things that he's done this year have been amazing musically. And then also that plus lesson, because it's going to be crucial. It's a step into my interactive planning build that I'll go into next week. You'll see how it all goes in. And we'll go into that next week, whether I'm at the school or whether I'm here, we'll go into that. So with that said, peace.